Alright, so now that we have input from our user, we can go ahead and decide to come up with some stats for our character, other than just a name, of course. So, what does a character need? Well, it'll need HP, attack, and defense, right? For like a basic RPG style of game. So, what would all of these be as opposed to a name? Well, they'd be numbers, right? That's another type of data that you can have in JavaScript. That's just a plain old number. It could be an integer, it could be a decimal. JavaScript treats them equally as numbers. So let's make variables for each of these. We'll make a variable for HP, and we'll just go ahead and give that a default value of 100. Note that we can actually assign a value to a variable for the first time on the same line that you declare it, right? This is the declaration part of it, and this is what's called the initialization, or the first time that we're assigning a value. Now let's make an attack stat, and we'll just make it 10, and defense, and we'll also make it 10, because nice and easy numbers are nice and easy to work with. So now let's do something kind of interesting with our stats here. So how do we change these, right? Well, let's give the user an option to perhaps put some of this defense into their attack. So say if they want to have like a glass cannon type of character that's super strong but really can't take a hit, then they can have the option to do so. So let's allow them to make a change. We're going to get that from a prompt that'll say transfer defense to attack. And they can put a number in there, right? We've seen how the prompts work in previous lessons, and it'll work the same way here. Now we can take a look at what exactly the change is, just to be sure that we're, getting the right thing here. And now we can make our changes. So the attack, right, in this case is going to be, if we're taking points away from defense and giving them to attack, we're going to want to add them to attack, right? So the way we do that in JavaScript is attack plus our change, right? They wanted to change it by a certain amount, and we're going to add that to attack. And now in order to store that value, see, because just adding it to attack isn't actually going to change the value of the variable. It just tells JavaScript, okay, take what this is, which is 10, and add it to whatever the number was. So say we have like 5, then it'll say like, okay, 15. But similarly to how in our last lesson we talked about, well, when you have a prompt and you just have it on its own, it doesn't really do anything with that value, which is kind of like, oh, there's a value, there's a semicolon, I'm not going to do anything with that. We need to actually assign this back to the value, back to the attack variable, right? So we have to add attack equals to the beginning of that. So now attack is going to be set to attack plus the change. And we're going to want to do the same thing for defense, except it'll be defense minus the change because we're taking away the points from defense, right? Now let's say that we want to offer them the ability to do the same in reverse, where instead of pouring points from defense into their attack, they can pour points from attack into their defense. So they can be perhaps a little bit weak, but super bulky, right? Make like a tank character. Well, we can actually use the same change variable from earlier, but we'll give it a new value that we get from the prompt of transfer attack to defense. And with the number that they give us there, what we can do is, of course, increase defense by the change and decrease attack by the change. So we can write that out this way. Now hold on a minute. What is this right here? This is a compound assignment operator. So what that does is it takes this mathematical operation, right, subtraction, and it takes the value out of the variable, attack, subtracts change from attack and then assigns it back to attack. So this is the equivalent of writing out attack is assigned with the value of attack minus change. These are exactly the same, except instead of having to write out attack twice, as you see here, which is a little bit cumbersome, we can just move this over here, and it cleans up the syntax very nicely, and it looks a lot cleaner. And we can do the same thing with other mathematical operators like addition. So in this case, we would want to be adding the change to our defense. That plus equals there is a compound assignment operator for adding and assigning. And after that, we will, of course, have our newly balanced stats. Now, there, of course, there are other things you can do for other than addition and subtraction. And for an example of that, let's give them the opportunity to change their overall difficulty. So say the change is equal to a prompt, and it will say difficulty adjustment. So based on the number they give us, here's what we're going to do with it. We are going to divide attack by the number they give us. We are going to divide defense by the number they give us. And we are going to multiply HP by 11 minus the change divided by 10. Now, this looks a little bit complex. I promise you, though, that this was made because what this will do is it'll decrease attack and defense proportionally to like the level of difficulty. So say like 1 is the default, right? That's no change. All your stats are default. But if you were to say input a difficulty of 2, then you're going to have your attack and have your defense. That's a big difficulty spike, right? But then in your HP, the way this works out is it's 11 minus 2 is 9 divided by 10, and we're multiplying 9/10 by the HP. Therefore, if our default HP is 100, then you'll have 90 HP. And for each level increase in difficulty, you'll lose 10 HP. That's what all this means. Try not to get caught up in the math, though. It's a little funky, but the point is that we can also divide and assign by a value, right? And multiply and assign by a value in just the same way as addition and subtraction. And all right, that's all for this video. Now here's a little thing that you need to take a note of before we move on. If you save this and you try to run it, give the character a new name of Nuggets because that's the best alternative name. And let's say we want to give 2 to attack, and then we change our minds. We actually want to give 5 back. Maybe making a difficulty adjustment of 2. If you were to log the stats below here, they don't actually work out the way that you would expect. I wish I could demonstrate that a little bit better, but there's a certain reason for that, and we'll get to that in the next video. So if it's not working properly, don't worry about it for right now. We'll see you in the next video.